Imagine you're standing in the middle of a storm. Not a literal one, but the kind of storm that happens inside your head when everything you've built is on the line. You've got a massive decision to make. Maybe it's a partnership that could double your revenue but feels slightly off in your gut. Maybe it's the decision to fire your very first employee because the business has outgrown them. Your heart is racing, your sleep is non-existent, and every piece of advice you get from friends or mentors just adds more noise to the room. This is the founder's fog. Most people think that high-stakes decision-making is about being smart or having the best data. But after studying the world's most resilient leaders and looking back at the ancient operating system of Stoicism, I've realized that the best decisions aren't made with your brain, they're made with your character. Stoicism isn't about being a robot or suppressing your feelings. It's about creating a mental fortress so that when the world is screaming at you, you can hear your own voice clearly. Today, we're going to walk through 7 Stoic principles that will turn you into a person who can make life-changing decisions with total, unshakable clarity. The first principle is the most famous for a reason, the dichotomy of control. Most of the stress you feel right now isn't coming from the decision itself. It's coming from your attempt to control things that are literally impossible to control. Think about a high-stakes product launch. You can control the quality of the code, the clarity of the marketing message, and the effort your team puts in. You can't control the YouTube algorithm, the way a competitor reacts, or whether a global event shifts the market's attention on launch day. I remember a founder who was terrified of a major investor meeting. He was spiraling because he didn't know if the investor would like him. I told him, the investor's opinion of you is none of your business. Your business is the truth of your numbers and the integrity of your pitch. When you stop trying to hold up the sky, your hands are finally free to actually do the work. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to play a perfect game. If you play a perfect game and lose, you can still sleep at night. If you play a sloppy game and win, you've just gotten lucky, and luck always runs out. The second principle is what the ancients called Premeditatio Malorum, or the Pre-Mortem. Most people are told to visualize success, to think positive thoughts and manifest their goals. That's a great way to get punched in the face by reality. High-stakes leaders do the opposite. They sit in a quiet room and they visualize every single thing that could go wrong. They imagine the server crashing. They imagine the lead designer quitting. They imagine the bank account hitting zero. This isn't pessimism, it's tactical preparedness. When you've already met the disaster in your mind, it loses its power to paralyze you when it shows up at your door. I once worked with a CEO who was about to sign a massive lease for a new headquarters. Everyone was celebrating. He sat down and asked, "What happens if our top 3 clients leave next month? How do we pay?" Because he asked that uncomfortable question, they negotiated a break clause into the lease. 6 months later, the market dipped, and that one clause saved the entire company from bankruptcy. Fear is only dangerous when it's a shadow. When you turn the lights on and look it in the eye, it becomes a checklist. The third principle is the view from above. When you're in the middle of a crisis, your perspective is about 2 inches wide. You're looking at a single email or a single balance sheet, and it feels like the entire universe is collapsing. But if you zoom out, if you look at your business from 30,000 feet, you realize that this crisis is just a tiny blip in a 10-year journey. Even further, it's a microscopic dot in the history of your industry. I like to use the 10-10-10 rule here. Will this decision matter in 10 minutes? Probably. In 10 months? Maybe. In 10 years? Almost certainly not. When you realize that most of what keeps you up at night is historically insignificant, you regain the ability to breathe. You start making decisions based on long-term values instead of short-term panic. You move from being the victim of the moment to being the architect of a decade. If you're sitting there right now feeling like you're buried under a mountain of these tiny blips and you can't even find the time to zoom out, we need to fix that. Most founders are trapped in the doing because they haven't built the systems to let them lead. If you want to start fixing your business today and get your head above water, you can download our free checklist right now. It takes about 15 minutes to go through, and it's designed to help you reclaim 10 or more hours of your week by showing you exactly what to stop doing. It's the first step towards moving from the storm into the fortress. You can find the link in the description below. The fourth principle is Amor Fati, or the love of fate. This is the hardest one to swallow. It's the idea that you shouldn't just tolerate the bad things that happen to you, you should love them, because every obstacle is actually a waypoint. I knew a founder whose primary manufacturing partner went under overnight, taking all their specialized molds with them. It was a disaster. He could have spent months suing them or complaining about his bad luck. Instead, he leaned into Amor Fati. He said, "This is exactly what we needed to force us to build our own in-house manufacturing." It was more expensive and more difficult in the short term, but a year later, they had higher margins and better quality control than any of their competitors. The disaster was the best thing that ever happened to them because it forced them to grow. A high-stakes leader doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "How is this happening for me?" When you stop fighting reality, you can start using it as fuel. The fifth principle is voluntary hardship. We live in a world that is obsessed with comfort. We want the ergonomic chair, the perfect temperature, and the seamless delivery. But comfort makes you soft, and soft people make terrible decisions under pressure. The Stoics would intentionally spend days eating plain bread, wearing old clothes, or sleeping on the floor. Why? Because they wanted to prove to themselves that their happiness didn't depend on their circumstances. In business, this means intentionally choosing the harder path sometimes. It means doing the uncomfortable outreach calls yourself, even when you can afford to outsource them. It means taking a no-luxury business trip to remind yourself that the business can survive without the fluff. When you know that your floor, the worst-case scenario, is actually totally fine, you become dangerous. You can make the bold, risky decision that everyone else is too comfortable to make. You aren't afraid of losing the gold because you've already proven you can thrive on the bread and water. The sixth principle is memento mori. Remember that you will die. People think this is morbid, but it's actually the ultimate prioritizer. Most high-stakes decisions are stressful because we're worried about our reputation, our ego, or our legacy. But when you realize that you and everyone's opinion you're worried about will eventually be gone, the fog clears instantly. Death is the great simplifier. It strips away the shoulds and leaves you with the musts. I remember a leader who was terrified to pivot his company into a completely new market. He was worried people would think he failed. Then he had a health scare. Suddenly, the reputation didn't matter. All that mattered was that he didn't want to spend his limited time on Earth running a company he didn't believe in anymore. He made the pivot, and it was a massive success. You don't have time to be timid. You don't have time to live someone else's version of a good life. Use the end of your life to dictate the quality of your decisions today. The seventh and final principle is justice and character. In Stoicism, justice doesn't just mean legal, it means doing the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. Every high-stakes decision has a profitable path and a principled path. Sometimes they're the same, but often they aren't. A manager chooses the profit, a founder chooses the character. I've seen companies keep a top-performing salesperson who was toxic to the culture because they didn't want to lose the revenue. That is a manager's decision. A founder realizes that the profit from that person is a poison that will eventually kill the entire organization. They fire the star because their character is more important than their quota. The paradox is that in the long run, the principled path always becomes the most profitable one. People want to work for, buy from, and invest in leaders they can trust. Your character is the only asset that nobody can take away from you, and it's the only thing that remains after the decision is made. High-stakes decision-making isn't about being right, it's about being sound. If you use these 7 principles, if you focus on your control, prepare for the worst, zoom out, love your fate, stay hard, remember your end, and prioritize your character, you won't just make better decisions, you'll become a better person. You'll become the kind of leader who can stand in the center of the storm and feel perfectly at peace, because you aren't reacting to the world anymore. You're responding from a place of deep internal stability. If you're ready to stop being an emotional weather vane and start being the architect of a self-running business system, we've created what we believe is the best business course on the market. We show you the exact modern frameworks we use to build businesses that run entirely without us. You can sign up 100% free, no credit card required, and get instant access to the full course intro right now. The link is in the description, and it's the very next video on your screen. It's time to stop letting the world decide your future and start deciding it for yourself. I'll see you in the next one.